What's up everyone and welcome back to another video. So I know it's been a while and I do apologize. It's just been a very busy semester for me. Probably one of the busiest semesters of my life, and I might actually make another video about that. But because of all the hectic, the very hectic nature of this past semester, I just really haven't had time to sit down and make a video up until now. And it's kind of weird because I'm actually in the middle of finals week right now, or almost into finals week. But the only reason I'm actually making a video right now is because it's kind of weird. I actually right now, right this moment, I have COVID. I've been pretty sick the past few days. I'm a little bit better right now, but just had this really massive brain fog that's made it impossible to do anything school related, anything math, science. I can't do it. But for whatever weird reason, maybe it's just because my brain can't do that stuff, so it's thinking of other things. I've just felt like this almost creative spark, where I've been thinking about other video ideas, and I've kind of thought about a few things that I'd like to talk about for this channel as well. And so I had a couple ideas that came up to me, and since I'm not able to get anything else done right now, I figured I might as well just sit down for a couple minutes and make a video. So hopefully it's helpful for you guys. But anyway, in this video, what I wanted to cover is the idea of taking a gap year. And I know this is something that comes up a lot. People have asked me about it. It's something that I did, and I think was both personally and professionally, a very big benefit for me. And in this video, I'll kind of get into the reasons as to why I think it was helpful for me and why I think it's helpful for a lot of people. I think in the past few years, there has been an increase in terms of people taking gap years. And from my perspective, there's a couple reasons for this. One of them is to kind of boost your application, right? So you take a year off of school, so it's a good time. It's a good amount of time to get other things in, whether it's clinical experience or research and publications. There's a lot of time right now that that time isn't filled up with coursework or school commitments. You can really invest and get some quality research, get some publications, get some really hardcore clinical experience. So that's one reason why people do it. That's not really why I did it, but although I did do full-time research during my gap year. The other reason, and this is why I did it, is for personal reasons. For me, it was the fact that I was in school for so long that I think it took 5 years in undergrad. So it's that like 5 plus 5 years of undergrad plus 4 years of high school. It's 9, 3 years of middle school. We got 12 years right there, and then I guess 6 years of elementary school. So that's almost 2 decades of school. And I really wanted a break, especially because I was going to go into an MDPhD program, which means 8 years of 8 years of school plus another 5 years of residency. So it's a lot of time, and I wanted to take that time off. And during my gap year, I went out and I was able to travel. I actually got married during my gap year. So I think personally it was very, very beneficial for me. And I don't think that I would be able to go through medical school. Let me backtrack a little bit. I think medical school would have been a lot more mentally strenuous than it already is if I didn't take that gap year, because then I wouldn't have this experience in my belt, under my belt, where I've actually taken a full year off of school where I haven't had to worry about grades or anything like that. It's good. I think it's been really good for me in that regard. Okay, so I think some common questions that people have about gap years are, first of all, should I take it? So like I said, there's a number of reasons as to why people do it, personal and professional. Personally, I think everyone should take a gap year because it's a really good experience to just kind of get away from it all, grow a little bit, see the outside world before you jump back into school. I think having a full-time job for a year, it's a very different experience. You can save up some money. You can see what life is like outside of school for a year. So I think it's very good in that regard. And I personally would recommend it to everyone who's going to go into medical school for sure. And even more so if you're trying to get into an MD PhD program. I just think the personal benefits of a gap year are just so so tremendous for that reason, for the reason that you take a break. So I'm gonna recommend it to anyone who asks me for that reason. The second one, and I think it's more nuanced, it's more dependent on where you're coming from, what your application looks like, is whether it's actually beneficial for your professional goals for your application. So in my experience, I think it was beneficial for me because the research experience that I did during my gap year, I was able to get some letters of rec out of it. And also during my gap year, I was able to get that last bit of clinical experience that I needed. I scribed for about, I want to say like 5 months or so. So I was doing both. I was scribing while also working, while also doing full-time research. And so I think that was sort of the last bit of clinical experience that I needed for my application. So I think if you have a weakness in your application, a gap year would be a good idea because it will allow you to fulfill that one last weakness that you need to take care of before you go on and apply for, while you're applying for medical school. The other thing that I thought was really beneficial about taking a gap year is that it allowed me to focus even more on my applications. So, when you're applying, you got to fill out your primary and then your secondaries, right? And so these secondaries are always coming in. They come in throughout the application, or like the first few months of the application cycle. And those also take a lot of work. And then you have to go out and interview, right? And so you got to prepare for this interview and be mentally ready. And I know I personally would have struggled to be mentally focused for the interviews if I also had exams and other things going on. And then there's also that worry that, if you don't get into medical school and you're putting in all this effort into applications, that sort of takes away from your grades. So it's very stressful, I think, if you do both at the same time. I mean, that's just my opinion. I didn't do that, but I knew people on the application trail who were doing both. So for example, funny story, there's this guy that I know, and it's funny because I'm friends with him now, but he was studying for an exam while interviewing. We interviewed at the same school, and he ended up waking, and so in the morning, there was a bus that came to pick us up from the hotel that we were all staying at, that all the MDPhD applicants were staying at, to take us to campus to get interviewed. And I think he had been studying the night before, and he woke up, and he slept pretty late, woke up late, and almost missed the interview because he was trying to, finish his assignment or finish studying or whatever. And, so you just have to realize, like, you're going to be doing both. You're going to study for your exams, you're going to be doing your homework, but you're also still going to have to prepare for your interviews. And I just think it's a lot easier and a lot less stressful if you just take a gap year. Okay, so the second question that comes up a lot is what you should do for your gap year. Do you have to do research? Well, the answer is no. You don't have to do research. People do all sorts of other things. People, I know people go and they do different clinical opportunities. For example, they spend a year scribing or spend a year doing clinical, working in some kind of clinical setting. Other people go out and volunteer. People, I think AmeriCorps is one example. People also they start their own organizations. So there's a lot that you can do. I did research side, and I have more experience on the research side, so that's what I'll speak about that. I spent that year at the NIH. I think I thought that was a really good opportunity for me. It was a paid opportunity. The NIH has a lot of post-bac opportunities where you can get paid and you can work at a lab at the NIH. And it's always, I think, just being at the NIH, it's a different setting from some of these university settings that you're usually used to as an undergrad. So it's a different research environment. It's very unique. It's next to DC, so it's a pretty good environment overall. And I highly recommend it to anyone who's trying to do it. Other things that I've seen people just continue their work, whatever work they're doing on campus, whatever they did as an undergrad. That's also an option. I would just say that whatever you're doing, just try to make sure you can get paid for it. I think that obviously it's better to get paid versus doing something for free. And there's just so many paid research opportunities out there that you shouldn't sell yourself short and do something for free if you don't necessarily have to. So bottom line, should you take a gap year? I think if you want to do it for personal reasons, definitely go for it. I wouldn't say you have to do it to improve your application. It sort of depends on where your application is. And the flip side of that, will taking a gap year hurt your application in any way? I don't think so. There's so many people who take gap years, 1 gap year, 2 gap years, and even longer. But as long as you're doing something productive, you're not just sitting home playing video games during that time, I think you'll be fine. Even if you're doing something that's not medically related, you're pursuing some very interesting passion, that should be something that'll work out in your favor. So I think in almost every circumstance, if you want to take a gap year, you should go for it. The only reason you shouldn't do a gap year is if you just don't want to. And that's all I can think of for this video right now. I'm sure there's more to discuss, but I'm actually feeling a bit tired now. And I can't really think of anything else. But if you have any questions, or if you think of something else that you'd like me to discuss, feel free to leave a comment below. You can also just send me a DM or email me. Both information for both of those, for any contact information for that should also be in the description below. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll tune in next time.